Okay, we can get started now. To begin, can you tell me your full name?
My Korean name is Sang-won Lee, but I go by Sean. It's Sean.
Ah, okay. And tell me, Sean, are you working or studying right now?
I'm a student. Currently, I'm studying electrical engineering in university in Hong Kong.
Mhm. Hmm. And do you enjoy your studies?
Yes, I do. I never expected myself to be an engineer until the last year in high school, but somehow I'm enjoying it.
Good. How is Hong Kong?
Hong Kong, I, from fourth grade in preschool all the way to high school graduation, I lived in China, Shanghai. So like Chinese culture was really familiar to me, so it was not a hard decision for me to move to Hong Kong for university.
Good. And what do you enjoy doing in your free time?
I used to read books a lot, but since freshman year in high school, no, in university, I started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. It's a grappling-based martial art, and I'm spending a lot of time training in my free time.
Good. All right. And what is your hometown? How would you describe your hometown?
I would describe my hometown, Seoul, my
Seoul.
hometown. So from 5 years old
Mhm.
to third grade in preschool until I moved to China. I lived in Seoul. It's a place called Gangseogu.
Mhm.
I still consider it to be my hometown.
Good. And what things do you like about your hometown?
It's a chill place, a lot of good restaurants, and but probably I have a lot of good memories in my childhood attached to my hometown.
Okay, good. And what things do you not like about it?
Chill, but also it's boring. There are not a lot of fun things to enjoy. So that's one thing I don't like about my hometown.
Okay, good. Now we'll talk about handwriting briefly. Do you often write with a pen?
I used to until high school, and from college, I use iPad and laptops a lot. So I would say no.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Um, when you have to write by hand, is your handwriting easy to read for other people?
Yes, I would say yes for English and Korean, but when I write Chinese, it's still bad.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, do you like to receive cards with handwritten notes or words in them?
Yes, especially for my birthday. My dad used to write me a handwritten letter on my birthdays. So I like to receive handwritten letter for my birthday, especially.
Cool. Okay, can you tell someone's personality from his or her handwriting?
Oh, I think that's a really insightful question. So yes, I think the handwriting somehow reflects the person's personality. If I see a scribble, I would assume the person has a more hastening personality. If I see a small, like, neat handwriting, I assume the person's really careful, and but not 100%. It often goes wrong.
Sure, sure. And finally, what's the difference between writing with a pen and typing on a computer?
Typing on computer has more formality. It's more neat, of course. So when I need to write for my assignments and work, I use laptop. But when I want to show my sincerity to my people I love, I use my handwriting.
Sure. Okay, now we can move to part two. And for part two, you're going to have one question, and you'll have 1 minute to prepare, and then up to 2 minutes to give your answer. Here is your question, and you can make notes to help guide you. So take a minute to prepare, and then we'll get started. Okay, that is a minute. So when you're ready, you can describe an application or program you use on your phone or computer.
Okay. The application I use on my phone or computer is Google, of course. And the Google here incorporates YouTube and ChatGPT for me. It's used generally as a search engine. I can search informations, papers, research papers, videos, and all sorts of things I want to know about something. And I use it for every purpose, actually. I start to use it in middle school, high school, when I was doing assignments. When I had to do my research assignments, I used Google, and that's how I started my first usage of Google. And later, ChatGPT came out. I use it for assignments as well. It's an AI that literally tells you anything you want to ask, you want to know. I use it because it has high credibility, yeah. But I can't really trust 100% because I should use my own resource judgmental skills to assess the credibility of the source. And I think I'll keep using until I find the better replacement for Google, YouTube, and ChatGPT. Then thank you for listening.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we can move on now to part 3. First question, which phone app is the most popular in your country?
Phone app. I would also say Google and YouTube for this.
Mm-hmm.
It leads the cultural trend. Even nowadays, the broadcast use Google's and YouTube to market their idols and TV shows. I think even my friends and the young generations watch YouTube a lot more than TV.
Mm-hmm.
So my answer is Google and YouTube.
Mm-hmm. And do you think parents should limit the time that their children spend on the phone?
Yes, because to use my own experience, I used to play a lot of games in high school. So if it's good to use a lot of it's good to watch YouTube, but the more time you spend on YouTube, the less time you can spend on like social life and sports. So there are downsides. So I think parents should limit their kids watching times on YouTube.
Sure. And do you think people depend on cell phone apps too much these days?
Yes, one example is the map function on your phone computer and navigations. So when you go on a trip, if you depend too much on your app to find roads, to find a way to something, you don't really remember how you get there. And also camera is one example. The more camera you use to take pictures, the less time you spend like actually viewing the place you went for travel.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And do you think some apps will help people study?
It depends on the person. It's no for me, but yes for some friends I know. So there's an app called Quizlet.
Mm-hmm.
So people use it to memorize vocabularies and terms, but it doesn't work for me. But I know my friend who uses it all the time to study his biology terms. So can't really make a judgment. It's no for me.
Okay. Good. Well, we made it to the end.
Yeah.
Nicely done. Let's see. Okay, we can move on to some feedback now. As you probably know, the IELTS is scored on 4 categories. So there's fluency and coherence, pronunciation, vocabulary, and grammar. You did a really nice job here today. So most of this is just good news, but we can talk about each category individually, briefly. The first 2, fluency and coherence, which is together, and pronunciation. These are very strong. You have a natural speaking voice, no pauses other than to think of a word or consider the next direction for the answer, and pronunciation is native-like. So there's really no improvements to be made there. Those are very good. Got a wide range of vocabulary. Really no problem with any of these questions. You can describe it in good detail. whether it was people's personality based on their handwriting, good vocabulary about hastening, or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as a grappling-based martial art, which is a very advanced and very specific way. So vocabulary is very good. Grammar is also good. Range of tenses, all very clear. I struggle to point out anything really at all. But I did notice a few times in part 1 that you might have forgot to use an article. For example, I think you said typing on computer and use laptop. So that could be either typing on computers to talk about it generally, or typing on a computer, using laptops, or using a laptop. But if we're using the singular form, we want the article. This is a very, very small, small point. And maybe one collocation that was not quite natural. You mentioned judgmental skills, but those would be probably just judgment skills. There's really nothing else. Apart from maybe one in part 3, when you were describing Quizlet, you mentioned that it would be helpful for learning vocabularies. But vocabulary is actually a non-count noun. So you might be learning 2,000 words, but it's just vocabulary. This stuff is really small. So your language skills are very, very advanced and quite good. In terms of like test approach, there's a few things to point out. Your part 2 answer was a minute and 25 seconds, which is not bad. The advice is to be between a minute and 2 minutes, but we always advise people to get as close as you can to 2 minutes. And it's even okay to have the examiner tell you to stop. You have this window of time to show all of the vocabulary and grammar that you can use. So as if it is possible, it's always good to keep going further. So that's for part 2. And then for part 3, your answers were good, but one thing that you don't have to do in part 3 is to give any summary. It's not like a paragraph that has a summary sentence at the end. You can kind of just answer it and describe it and then finish. It's short enough that no summary is needed. And the other point in that section is that you want to try to avoid giving a personal example. So rather than saying, from my perspective, I think we should do this, part 3 really challenges you to think very broadly about what people in general would do, should do, or have done, depending on the shape of the question. Those can be hard to answer because it's hard to talk for everybody, but it is challenging you to speak generally in that way. So this is a very strong test, and if I had to, and I do have to, estimate your score, I would say today was probably an 8.5, which is very good, and it could be a 9 with very, very small improvement. So really nice job, and thanks for coming.
I have one question I want to ask you. So the paper says describe an application you usually use on your phone or computer, but I used 3, YouTube, Google, and ChatGPT, but I tried my best to incorporate and make them into one form. Is it okay?
I am actually glad you asked. I wrote it down and kind of forgot to mention it. It would be good in this question, describe an application, would be to really focus on one application. That would be hard to do with Google. I mean, I guess Google is a program, but Google has become so big and it does so many things that it gets hard to talk about it as a single entity, because I guess it owns YouTube. I don't think it owns ChatGPT.
It doesn't.
I think that's a Microsoft product. So yes, a very good question, and you would want to try to focus this one on one. I think you did. You mostly talked about Google, but you did talk about ChatGPT, which loses the focus a little bit. So yeah, really good question. Cool. Any other questions?
That's it.
All right. Well, nicely done again, and thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, and good luck.